Some old crusty wrestling cards that nobody ever talks about. 2 wrestling card sets that just continue to cement their legacy. Women's wrestling cards are still bringing in a premium. And a couple of different ways you can view 2 different cards of 2 wrestling legends. This is the Wrestling Card Market Watch for July 2022. What's up, wrestling fans and trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards Market Watch Edition. At the end of each month, I do one of these videos looking back at the previous month's sales and talking about some interesting cards and sales and talking points that can be gathered from that information. All in hopes to better serve you, the wrestling card collecting community. Helping you better navigate the hobby and looking at things through a different lens that you may not have thought of certain cards or aspects of the hobby before. But before we get into what happened in July of 2022, here's just a few ways you can help show your support to my content and help keep these videos coming out. The easiest thing you can do, you're already here, it's free, hit that subscribe button. Trying to get to that 1,000 subs at the time of this recording. Who knows, maybe we get to 1 million subs and somebody looks back at this in several years and be like, oh, what a small timer. But that's the goal, trying to get to that 1,000. It's an interesting milestone that I kind of set for myself when I started this channel. And of course, if you're enjoying this video so far or any of my other videos, go ahead and give me that thumbs up, hit that like button. Check out the podcasts. Yes, it's not only videos, podcasts that are out there about wrestling cards. Wrestling with Cards, the podcast, that's my solo podcast, as well as the Worlds Collide podcast. Myself and Tony Vella getting together each Wednesday morning is when those episodes drop. And our topics are all over the place. We've got listener questions. We've got This Is Your Card, where we kind of break down some of the top cards of a specific talent. And I could keep going on and on, but the topics are really endless over there. Again, the Wrestling with Cards podcast and the Worlds Collide podcast are both available on all popular podcast platforms. So whatever you like to listen to podcasts on, just search it on there and you should be able to find it. And hey, please subscribe to that as well and give us a review if you like what you hear. And also, I failed to mention on the YouTube aspect of this, as well as the podcast, one of the easiest things you can do as well is to share the video, the channel, the podcast with a friend. Anybody that's in the hobby. Anybody, actually more so specifically wrestling fans out there who aren't collecting cards. Get this video and the podcast out to them. Let them know that wrestling cards are a thing. Wrestling cards are cool. In fact, it's my favorite aspect of collectibles that I've ever been a part of. And I think a lot of other people would realize that too if they just had some more information in front of them about it. And again, that's the whole reason I started doing videos, podcasts, or anything else that has to do with wrestling cards. Just trying to grow the pie. If you'd like to help contribute to the show monetarily, check out Wrestling with Cards on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month. What can you buy out there for $1 a month? Well, actually, there is something. We'll get into that in just a second. But for $1 a month, you can have your name in the credits of these videos. Here's a list of some people who have been with me for a long time on Patreon. And once again, we thank everybody that's on this list for contributing and helping these videos come out. But not only can you get your name in the credits, there's also other tiers where you can get bonus like video requests, video access that's only available on Patreon, and much more. I mentioned what can you buy for $1? Actually, if you use some of the built-in discounts in my eBay store, you can get some cards for $1, or just if you want to buy a single card, I've got tons of cards for as low as $1.50 shipped. That's right, $1.50 shipped out the door. Wrestling card coming your way. And of course, you can check me out on social media, pretty much on all platforms, at Zhan Morning, I believe, on almost everything. Links below to everything I mentioned, but also links below to buying me a coffee, the iced coffee, back again, another video, another week. Thanks to you, the viewers, who are donating and keeping that caffeine supply coming to keep these videos coming out. Now get ready to take some notes as we dive into some talking points, sales, and other things about July 2022 in the wrestling card world. 1987 Allen & Ginter Joe Action Tobacco Card, $89.99. However, a best offer of $63.21 with $4 shipping was accepted. I think cards like this are just so cool. I'm just fascinated with cards that are as old as this one is. Not to mention this is in that time frame of being some of the first wrestling cards to ever be produced. The origins of this hobby that we love and this niche within a niche of wrestling cards started with cards like this. But why do people never talk about these cards? We often hear the term vintage thrown around with a lot of cards from the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, maybe the 50s. Yet here we are with a card that's over 100 years old. It's one of the first wrestling cards ever made. And you may be saying, well, Zhan, I don't like this card because it's not shiny. There's no autograph. There's no parallels. It's not numbered. I can't watch any of these guys in these 100-year-old cards on Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. While I do understand those perspectives, one thing I would argue is these cards are actually probably more rare than you think. You have to wonder how many of them actually survived 100 years. And then if they did, what condition can you get them in? I feel like these types of cards, which are the origins of wrestling cards, really fit in anyone's collection. I don't care how you collect. Also, not to mention, look at pre-war and early vintage baseball. Those cards have a big collector base and bring in some big time money. I don't know if this is a secret or not, but the majority of the people that are currently collecting pre-war baseball and early vintage, they didn't grow up watching them. In fact, a lot of them weren't even born when those were coming out. And I'm not saying that like this 100-year-old card or some other types of similar early, some of the first wrestling cards out there are going to bring in the value or the interest as the pre-war and vintage baseball. I'm just saying it's something to think about as you see these and they're under $100, and I'm just not sure why no one's talking about them. So I just wanted to shine some light because I think they're awesome. 1998 and 99 WCW autos and Wrestling All-Stars from 1982 and 1983. Each month we're seeing more and more of the cards from these two sets being bought, sold, transacted. And while most of the time we're seeing the hobby headline cards being the big hitters in these sets, I want to take just a second to talk about some of the lower end of the sets. We're starting to see the prices and the demand slowly creeping up for those bottom tier or even mid-tier talents in these two sets, with many of them being raw card purchases. Does that mean that there are actually some serious hardcore collectors that are going after these cards and not just looking to flip them instantly? And we'll throw into that too, maybe they're not grading snobs, they just want the cards. Are people just buying bits and pieces of these sets to say that they own a piece of history? And what I mean by that is these being two of the most popular wrestling card sets of all time. Are they buying these because what I just said, and they're trying to piece together the sets now based on the history and the lore of these sets? And by owning either the complete set or a piece of the set, they're kind of part of this exclusive club. Now, I don't know if any of that's true, but it's just kind of some thinking out loud I'm doing as I'm wondering why the lower end of these sets is starting to go up. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, I still think the 1998-99 WCW on-card autos and the 1982-83 Wrestling All-Stars cards are two of the biggest and most important sets within the wrestling card hobby. And it appears that most of the people out there would agree with this. Again, based on the sales trajectory and the lower end starting to creep up. 1988 Wonderama PSA 10 auto header card, $190.50 with $4 shipping. This is a pretty cool card that I'm not sure was supposed to be a cool card. Let me explain. Now, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but I think this is correct, this card was on top of nearly every single pack you would buy of these Wonderama cards. So essentially it was kind of a freebie. It was almost like old school baseball cards throwing that stick of gum in every single pack. They got a stick of gum, wrestling fans got Ric Flair. Now, why is this cool? Just look at it. This is another great snapshot in time, which this whole 88 Wonderama set does a really good job of. In fact, if you look at the cards, they don't look as much like trading cards. They look a little bit more like little Polaroids. I know a lot of people don't like that style, but I think it's cool. And again, I love wrestling history, so maybe that's why I like them so much. But when you look at this image of this header card, you're sent straight back to the middle of the 80s, NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, Ric Flair, and Saturday Night 605 Wrestling. Also, this is an inexpensive way to get something cool signed by Flair. We all know he's started limited certain cards to be signed, but to my knowledge, this card is still not one of those premium cards. So you could hypothetically pick this up raw at a card show or on eBay, take it to a convention that he's at to get signed, which I think is what happened with this card we're talking about. And as a side note, we're talking about this card. Be careful. Once again, I've talked about this before. When you're buying a PSA graded card that has an autograph on it, make sure you're paying attention to the label. If the label just says trading card at the top, or sticker, or paper, something like that, that just means the autograph is authenticated. So for example, the card we're talking about, the autograph was authenticated at 10, not the card. And I spoke about this card being on top of most of those packs. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the packs, but they're really tightly wrapped with like a cellophane. So maybe that's why people aren't really grading these as much, is because they're just so condition sensitive that they don't want to mess with it. But then that leads into another cool aspect of this card, is the chase aspect of grading. These look like they're going to be tough grades. Again, due to them being on the top of the packs, and again, maybe people threw them out. Maybe, people looked at them like a stick of gum. Obviously, they're probably not chewing the card, but maybe they just threw it in the trash. They're like, oh, I don't need this, and they also had a backer on those packs as well. They threw those away too. And people may say, okay, well, these cards are on top of every single pack, and there's however many packs that were produced. The population counts on these have to be ridiculous. But at the time of recording, checking PSA's pop report, there were only 15 10s and 28 9s. In the grand scheme of how many packs were put out, that's a pretty low pop report for this card. And then you also have the test run version of this, which is even more rare and adds another chase element to how cool this card is. So this card checks all the boxes for me. It brings back nostalgia with the image and the design. It has some chase elements to it with grading and using the test run version. And it's a great, inexpensive option to go get autographed by the man himself, Ric Flair. The total pack, okay, not Lex Luger, the complete package of a wrestling card, in my opinion. Now, as we go into this next couple cards, I want to take a second to take a trip back in time. Okay, so maybe just going back a few years. Women's wrestling cards for the longest time ruled the hobby. And people can equate that to different types of things that we're not going to talk about on this channel today. But more recently, we saw a little bit of a shift. We started seeing a lot of male superstars being some of the top selling cards and the women being bumped down just a little bit. But here I've got a couple of sales for you to show you that women's wrestling cards are as strong as ever. 2018 Topps WWE Liv Morgan Auto, 1 of 1, $2,795. However, a best offer of $1,950 with $995 shipping was accepted. Then we had a 2017 Topps Then Now Forever Alexa Bliss Kiss Card Auto, 1 of 1, $7,500. However, best offer of $2,500 with $999 shipping was accepted. So obviously these are both 1 of 1s, which is going to drive a premium. And then combine that with Liv winning the women's title recently and Alexa being back on TV in a more normal role, I'm sure those were some factors for these sales. But let's look at a couple of other factors that kind of came to top of mind as I saw these sales and what they could mean. Are we starting to see an effect on cards with more real-life wrestling events? For example, in the sports card world, somebody goes on a tear, their cards go up. Somebody goes into the Hall of Fame, sometimes their cards go up. Rookie comes out, the cards go up. Pretty common knowledge. But in wrestling, we haven't seen that quite as much. Another thing, with these cards being 4 to 5 years old now, are we actually seeing collectors go back and dig into some of the lesser-known sets from a few years ago? Instead of just going to the ultra vintage or ultra modern, trying to find those spaces in between there where people really aren't talking about certain cards. Are we getting more collectors into the wrestling card hobby in general? Are we getting more super collectors out there, which you guys know I love? And I honestly think super collectors could just elevate the hobby to a whole new level if everybody kind of picked somebody and went with it. But that's another topic for another day. But as you know, super collectors have to have everything. So maybe that's some new super collectors out there or existing ones going out there and making a play on these 1 of 1s because super collectors gotta have it all. Are more females coming into the wrestling card space? Are they finding talent or characters that they can connect with? I talk about connecting with Karrion Kross or Ultimate Warrior and the fact that, I get up every day and whatever challenge is in front of me, I'm just intense all the time with these guys and their entrance and their style in the ring. That's kind of how I can relate to them, and then I just start collecting their cards, and, I'm probably the number 1 Karrion Kross collector in the world now. Nice to see him back on TV. But again, are younger girls getting into this? Is this like when I was a kid and I played basketball and I looked up to Shaquille O'Neal? Are some of these girls out there that are in elementary or junior high or high school, or even older, are they looking at an Alexa Bliss, an Asuka, Becky, Bianca, and saying, man, I can relate to them this way, or I like them because of this, and I'm going to super collect them? I'm not sure. Everything that I've mentioned kind of about these was kind of thinking out loud, and again, things that were top of mind as I saw these 2 sales. 1997 Cardinal Trivia Rocky Maivia PSA 10, $2,601.55 with $10 shipping. Wow, I don't know what to say about this one. Where do we start? Where do we go? This card was at one time viewed as the rock card to own. The rookie card. But wait, maybe it's actually the football card. But then the interest shifted to, hey, there's these 97 Panini stickers. And since then, we've seen public interest and money just kind of continue to flow from one to the other to the other. And maybe little comic images based cards sprinkled in there. We haven't had a real clear winner with any of these specific rock cards. And it's not to say that any of them are bad either. It's just something that I've noticed that's interesting to look at and kind of figure out what's going on. I've always loved and said the buy it all approach, if you can afford it, is kind of the best thing to do. You know, creating a little mutual fund. I'm not wanting to talk about investing in these cards. In fact, I've actually kind of started shying away from investment talk. But just think, if you have all of these cards and you're a rock fan, of course you've probably got to have them all, especially if you're a super collector. But if you've got them all and one goes up, one goes down, it doesn't really matter because you have them all, you're enjoying them all. And then of course you can talk about the grading game with these and how some may be more valuable in specific companies' holders, some are more condition sensitive, and that does create kind of a artificial scarcity to these cards. But what I find interesting is this kind of changing of styles that I'm seeing within collectors. And I could be wrong, but I think I'm starting to see a shift in the demand and in the pricing of specific things within wrestling cards. It seems like people are truly wanting rare things now. The things that just don't pop up on eBay searches all the time. So for example, we're going to talk about this card today, the 97 Cardinal, or you can throw the football card in there, or comic images, or that Panini sticker. Do an eBay search for any of these cards, and guess what? You're going to have some show up. Now they're going to be in a variety of formats, raw, graded, different companies' graded slabs, and of course, varying degrees of grading. But the point is, you can search these cards and you're going to find them. And we see a lot of them coming out, and a lot of people's grading submissions are starting to come back now. After the grading companies were backlogged, it's just putting a huge availability of these cards out on the market now. And there's so many of them out there that maybe people just see, okay, well, these aren't that cool anymore. And again, that's an interesting topic to have, because, which, you know, we'll probably do another video on sometime maybe. But you have these iconic cards, 52 Mantle, 86 Fleer Jordan, 82 Hogan, 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey. There's tons of these things out there, but they're such iconic cards that the demand is still there. So maybe that's what actually ends up working out with some of these rock cards. But again, we're just seeing money flow from one to another, and there hasn't been that one rock card out of the ones I've mentioned that's just kind of stood out. Maybe it's that autograph card, that 1998 Comic Images auto of his. Some people say it's a rookie auto, but it has become an iconic card. And if you do an eBay search on these rock autograph cards, again, it's the same thing with these other ones. You're going to find them to varying degrees and varying types of autographs, whether it's graded, whether it's not. But there's still a demand. That seems to be a really popular card. But when I said people want the truly rare items, what I'm talking about is the low-numbered cards, gold refractors, one-of-ones, and other types of autographs where he just doesn't sign very much. From the people that I've talked to, both online and offline, as well as what the market is kind of saying about these cards, it seems like a lot of the collectors are kind of going the very rare and scarce route over the cards that are readily available, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not saying I'm right or wrong about any of these questions that I've proposed today. I just like to think out loud and put it out there for other people that may be thinking or seeing the same things, or what people have already been talking about, to just give a perspective. I hope today's video brought you some value. If it did, please hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and again, share this video with anybody in the wrestling card hobby, anybody in the sports card hobby, or maybe more importantly, wrestling fans who aren't collecting wrestling cards. Get this out to them. Family, friends, coworkers, anybody that likes wrestling, share this video with them. Let's get more people into wrestling cards, growing that pie. I greatly appreciate your support and always love hearing feedback, whether that's on social media, whether you want to check the links in the show notes to everything that I've got going on, and when you're done, reply with your feedback. That's a good thing you can do as well. I just love hearing the feedback of what other people think, because I may be totally way off base on these things. I've never said, hey, I'm the wrestling card expert, like some people out there. Like, I'm just like to talk about the cards and put out my perspective and my thoughts. Doesn't mean I'm right. But until next time, click the videos on the screen that you're looking at for more great wrestling card content, and I'll see you there.